I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and Tom didn't want to continue in the fight. So
just weeks before one of the most debated calls in UFC history, Dana White made a statement that would soon ignite chaos. Those few words set off a chain reaction, one that placed a UFC president on a collision course with his own heavyweight champion. What followed became one of the most dramatic turning points the division has ever seen. Moments ago, the MMA world was shaken. A decision by Dana White sent shockwaves across the sport, placing Tom Aspinall at the heart of a storm that could shape how he's remembered forever. The most coveted prize in combat sports, the UFC Heavyweight Championship, was stripped from a fighter who had waited longer than anyone to finally claim it.to understand how things unraveled. We need to go back to October 25th, 2025. That night in Abu Dhabi, Aspinall entered the Etihad Arena to defend the undisputed heavyweight title for the first time. Standing across from him was Cyril Gane, the former interim champion. In the main event of UFC 321, this marked Aspinall's 19th professional MMA appearance, and expectations were sky high. More than 18,000 fans filled the arena, anticipating an explosive showdown between two of the division's most technical heavyweights. For many, this was supposed to be Aspinall's defining moment, the night he erased all doubts about his championship reign. Despite never sharing the cage with John Jones, Aspinall had been elevated to undisputed champion earlier that year following Jones' retirement. Gane was chosen as the first challenger in what was billed as a dangerous but manageable title defense. Odds makers heavily favored Aspinall, listing him at -355, while Gane entered as a +280 underdog. The bout was promoted as a high-level striking duel. Aspinall had built momentum with a series of rapid knockouts in previous title fights, thrilling fans and analysts alike. Many expected Gane to be just another name added to his highlight reel. The opening round saw Aspinall take control early. He pressed forward behind jabs and chopping leg kicks, one of which briefly destabilized Gane. But Gane responded well, firing back with sharp punches and digging to the body, showing more precision than many anticipated. While neither man suffered major damage, Aspinall dictated positioning and pace, holding the center of the octagon. The tension inside the arena was unmistakable. Both fighters were settling into range, and it felt like the division was on the brink of witnessing something special. Then came the moment that changed everything. With just over 4 minutes gone in the round, Aspinall threw another low kick. At the same time, Gane extended a jab that unintentionally struck both of Aspinall's eyes. Aspinall collapsed instantly, covering his face in visible pain. Referee Jason Huzo halted the contest and called in the cage-side physician. After a brief examination and Aspinall's report of severe pain and impaired vision, the fight was stopped. The crowd erupted in loud boos, stunned by the abrupt ending. The official ruling, no contest, caused by an accidental double eye poke in a matter of seconds. What was meant to be Aspinall's crowning moment dissolved into uncertainty, setting the stage for controversy that would soon spiral far beyond the octagon.
Well, I actually got eye poked twice in the fight. First one wasn't too bad, he got warned for it. The second one, obviously, Cyril Gane tried to make my head a bowling ball with the double eye poke knuckle deep in both.
The severity of what happened cannot be overstated.
The seriousness of the incident cannot be minimized. This was not a brief interruption or minor foul. Aspinall was immobilized, treated immediately, and taken for hospitalization inside the venue. In the moments that followed, Cyril Gane expressed repeated remorse, emphasizing that the foul was accidental. No disciplinary action was taken, but the situation reignited long-standing concerns within MMA regarding glove design and the sport's ongoing struggle to prevent eye-related injuries. What unfolded next, however, would prove far more damaging than the injury itself. The post-fight press conference. Dana White addressed the media with remarks that would permanently alter his relationship with the reigning heavyweight champion. He described the no contest as a major inconvenience for the promotion and downplayed the seriousness of the eye injury. More controversially, he framed the stoppage as a personal decision by Aspinall rather than the result of medical intervention, setting a narrative that quickly spread and took hold. The implication was immediate and severe. The heavyweight champion, who had waited more than a year and a half to claim undisputed status, was suddenly portrayed as a fighter who chose not to continue. In a sport where endurance and resilience define reputations, those comments cast doubt on Aspinall's toughness and competitive spirit. striking the core of his credibility as a champion. What few understood at the time was how grave the injury truly was done on November 30th, 2025. Aspinall releases official medical documentation publicly, offering clarity amid growing criticism from fans and skepticism fueled by White's statements. The report revealed a diagnosis of bilateral traumatic Brown syndrome, an extremely rare condition caused by damage to the eye superior oblique tendon system. Cases like this are seldom seen even in combat sports, and bilateral involvement makes it exceptionally uncommon. The condition severely limits vertical eye movement, causing misalignment and profound visual disturbances. Everyday tasks become difficult under these circumstances, making professional competition at the highest level virtually impossible. Further imaging revealed additional trauma to the orbital tissue and a small fracture in the medial wall of the right eye socket. This was not an injury that could be overcome through grit or willpower. Aspinall was dealing with persistent double vision, restricted ocular motion, intense light sensitivity, blurred vision, and significant loss of visual field. He was medically prohibited from competition, with surgery a possible outcome despite the mounting medical evidence. Dana White stood by his earlier position. That refusal to acknowledge the severity of the injury marked the moment the bond between the UFC president and his heavyweight champion shattered beyond repair.
I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and Tom didn't want to continue in the fight. So
Those words struck like a thunderbolt through the fighting community.
The questions Aspinall raised struck at the core of fighter safety within the UFC. Why should an athlete be expected to gamble with permanent vision lost due to an illegal strike? And why should the fighter on the receiving end of a foul be framed as a problem simply for choosing long-term health over immediate continuation? These were issues the organization had never clearly resolved, but on December 2nd, 2025, during an interview with Ariel Helwani, Aspinall revealed another troubling detail. Nearly 6 weeks after the fight, Dana White had not contacted him a single time, despite publicly discussing his condition. Aspinall stated plainly that there was no personal relationship between himself and the UFC president. All communication, he explained, went through Hunter Campbell. There were no texts, no private messages, no check-ins, not once in 6 weeks. Aspinall made it clear that Campbell, the UFC's chief business officer, had been supportive and proactive in offering medical assistance. But that was where organizational care stopped. The contrast was impossible to ignore. One executive remained engaged, while the president of the company stayed silent. The message was unmistakable. The context made the situation even more complicated. From July 2024 through October 2025, Aspinall did not compete, not because he was unwilling, but because he insisted on waiting for John Jones. He declined alternative matchups, believing the unification bout was owed to him. That decision effectively stole the heavyweight division. Now, with an uncertain recovery timeline, potential surgery looming, and no clear date for a return, Dana White faced a dilemma few believe he would ever confront involving one of his own champions, that a UFC championship is more than symbolic. It drives an entire division's business ecosystem, pay-per-view sales, sponsorships, broadcast negotiations, and promotional momentum. An inactive champion, regardless of circumstance, becomes a risk rather than a resource. The fight business does not pause, even for fighters who have shown loyalty to the organization. The tension between Dana White and Tom Aspinall did not appear overnight. To fully grasp the magnitude of what followed UFC 321, it's necessary to revisit the year of frustration that led to it. The relationship had been eroding long before the post-fight controversy. Aspinall captured the interim heavyweight title in November 2023, yet waited more than 18 months for a unification bout. During that time, John Jones returned from injury, defended against Stipe Miocic at UFC 309 in November 2024, and then retired abruptly in June 2025. White's refusal to strip Jones fueled widespread accusations of favoritism, with Aspinall openly voicing his frustration on multiple occasions. This was not a champion sitting idle. Aspinall stepped in on short notice when needed. He served as a backup fighter. He made himself available whenever the promotion called. Yet the unification fight never materialized, as Jones' status was protected at every turn. His legacy prioritized over Aspinall's career progression. That on June 17, 2025, White finally set a deadline, telling Jim Rome the situation would be resolved within weeks or the UFC would move forward without Jones. For the first time, The heavyweight division appeared to be moving again just 4 days later. At the UFC Baku post-fight press conference, White announced Jones' retirement via phone call and elevated Aspinall to undisputed champion. White expressed regret over how things unfolded and promised to compensate Aspinall financially. The admission was implicit. The organization had mishandled the situation by September 2025. Even Jones acknowledged the damage. He admitted fault in delaying the division and sought to apologize directly to White. While White accepted the apology, he barred Jones from attending the UFC's White House event, citing broken trust stemming from the Aspinall situation. The takeaway was clear. Reliability mattered more than reputation. If John Jones could face consequences for voluntary delays, what would happen to a champion sidelined indefinitely by injury? UFC 321 created an unsolvable problem. Aspinall's first undisputed title defense ended abruptly due to an accidental double eye poke that caused orbital trauma and the onset of Brown syndrome. Aspinall chose to protect his vision, a decision that drew backlash from fans and sharp commentary from the UFC president. Medical documentation later confirmed the severity of the injury, but the damage was already done. Dana White's post-fight remarks shaped the narrative. The idea that Tom didn't want to continue became a soundbite weaponized against the champion. Critics and casual fans alike questioned his toughness, and the impact on his reputation was immediate and lasting. So the question remains, how does a champion recover when the fight outside the cage becomes just as brutal as the one inside it?
Well, listen, I didn't continue. I'll tell you why I didn't continue. Because I'm not a dummy. Like, I'm not going to go out there and fight one of the best strikers in the world if I can't see.
With double vision.
With any eye. Look, I know, as an MMA fighter, look, things are going to happen in the fight that compromise you.
During a November 30th interview, Dana White responded to the criticism surrounding the situation. He made it clear that no one was blaming Aspinall for being unable to continue after suffering an eye poke. White explained that while he supports stricter consequences for fouls like that, the UFC's main focus is moving forward. He emphasized that a second Aspinall fight is being lined up as soon as possible, potentially in early 2026, once medical clearance is granted. However, he also stressed that any plans depend on having a champion who is fully healthy and capable of competing.
Was phrased led to some of the criticism afterwards. In other words, if he would have come up and said, poked in the eye, illegal, couldn't see, couldn't continue, serious injury, etc., people would have laid off. They would have taken cues from him.
It definitely didn't help the cause. Definitely didn't.
At the time, the champion had no clear return date. Surgery was a real possibility, leaving his recovery timeline uncertain. As a result, the heavyweight division once again found itself at a standstill, not because of John Jones' ongoing controversies, but due to an injury caused by an illegal strike inside the octagon. When viewed in a broader sense, the situation highlights a recurring issue. Dana White's strained history with elite heavyweights has often fueled debate about how the UFC handles its top stars. Stipe Miocic has previously spoken about feeling underappreciated despite his legacy, while Francis Ngannou ultimately walked away from the promotion after long-standing disputes over pay and respect. Now, Tom Aspinall appeared to be heading down a similarly tense path, with his relationship with UFC leadership seemingly beyond repair. In the aftermath of the incident, veteran referee Herb Dean confirmed that athletic commissions began serious discussions about tightening eye poke regulations. Proposed measures included automatic point deductions for outstretched fingers and firmer officiating standards. Yet despite those ongoing talks, Aspinall remained unable to compete. On November 23, 2025, Dana White publicly criticized Aspinall's suggestion that he might vacate the title if his teammate didn't receive a title opportunity, calling the idea unreasonable. From there, tensions continued to rise week by week, with neither side willing to back down. By November 30th, Aspinall pushed back against his critics even more forcefully, arguing that fighters should never be expected to continue while effectively unable to see due to a foul.
Well, look, if you were sidelined from doing your job for like 15 months, not allowed to do anything, you train your ass off for 6 months for a fight, then to get double eye pokes, be left with no vision for nearly 6 weeks because of an illegal move. How do you think I feel? Not feeling fantastic, am I?
The situation exposed deeper concerns about how the UFC manages its fighters. While the promotion is quick to market rising stars like Aspinall, critics argue it moves far slower when those same fighters are sidelined by serious injuries. The controversy mirrored past disputes and renewed calls for rule changes, but the most pressing issue was clear. What would happen to the heavyweight title? It's important to understand that the UFC, under Dana White's authority, has the power to strip a champion if inactivity drags on or if a fighter is unwilling or unable to compete. This is not theoretical. Conor McGregor lost his belt under similar circumstances. Georges St. Pierre was stripped. Tony Ferguson was relieved of his interim title. The policy has been enforced before, even against the sport's biggest stars. With a heavyweight division stalled and no confirmed timetable for Aspinall's return, tensions continued to rise. The champion was openly criticizing both the organization and its president, and the division remained frozen. At that point, the real question wasn't whether Dana White would step in. It was how long he would wait. The heavyweight class simply couldn't afford to remain on hold while its champion faced injuries that might require surgery.
Obviously, you've been a massive help to the UFC. You've taken a fight on 2 weeks' notice. You've taken a fight in the middle of the night, been backup fighter for Jones versus Miocic, and then obviously the whole John Jones saga. How do you sort of see this going forward for yourself with the UFC?
I think right now we just got to focus on the health, innit?
While the champion stayed locked in on his recovery, the promotion's attention shifted toward business. And those two paths were on a direct collision course. Dana White confirmed that the UFC would cover Aspinall's medical expenses through Hunter Campbell. But notably, there was no personal outreach from White himself. Any financial assistance came through intermediaries, never directly from the UFC president. Initially, White maintained that a rematch would be scheduled as soon as Aspinall was medically cleared, with early 2026 floated as a realistic target. But as that window drew closer, there were no signs that Aspinall was anywhere near ready to return. In hindsight, comments made at the post-fight press conference didn't hold up. Claims that neither fighter was seriously injured were later contradicted by Aspinall's medical records. Public reaction quickly split down the middle. Supporters praised Aspinall for prioritizing his long-term health and career. Critics, however, accused him of damaging the heavyweight division by refusing to fight through adversity. The debate only intensified that on December 3, 2025, former champion Henry Cejudo publicly blasted Dana White, saying, "Everyone needs to toughen up, including Dana White." His outburst struck a nerve, with many pointing to Aspinall's situation as proof of deeper dysfunction within the sport. The comparison to John Jones added another layer. Jones faced consequences for delays he willingly created through negotiations and strategic holdouts. That raised a critical question. If Jones was punished for slowing down the division by choice, what would happen to a champion who openly challenged a UFC president, disputed the official narrative, and couldn't offer any clear timeline for his return?
I've said hello here and there, but I don't really have a relationship with Dana. I have a relationship with, I speak to Hunter.
You're the heavyweight champion of the world. You're a huge star. You've taken fights on short notice. You've been backup fighter. You stayed on the sidelines for etc., etc., etc.
Tension between Tom Aspinall and the UFC showed no signs of easing. His team continued to push for organization-funded access to specialized medical care, while Dana White remained noticeably silent on a personal level. It became clear that the standoff could not last much longer. Something was going to break. Aspinall felt let down by the UFC president, but from White's perspective, patience had run out. He did not view the injury with the same level of urgency Aspinall believed it deserved. More importantly, White wanted a heavyweight division driven by momentum, led by a champion who could actively defend the title rather than sit on the sidelines. That uncertainty ended today. Dana White's decision to remove Tom Aspinall as UFC heavyweight champion sent shockwaves across the entire combat sports world. After waiting more than 18 months for his opportunity to unify the belt, stepping in on short notice, and carrying the division through the John Jones era, Aspinall was not defeated inside the octagon. Instead, his reign ended behind closed doors through an executive decision. The consequences stretched far beyond a single fighter. Every athlete on the UFC roster has now received a clear message about where they stand. Injuries, even those caused by illegal fouls, do not pause a business. Publicly challenging the organization's leadership carries a price. And open-ended recovery timelines are unacceptable, regardless of context. What were once unspoken expectations are now firmly established rules. This decision also raises serious concerns about fighter safety moving forward. If a champion can lose his title while recovering from an injury caused by a foul, what motivation do fighters have to protect themselves or report injuries honestly? The system, as it stands, appears to penalize the victim while offering little accountability for the offending fighter, that I in this case. It was Cyril Gane's illegal action that set the entire chain of events in motion. Yet he faced no disciplinary consequences, while Aspinall paid the ultimate price by losing his championship. The precedent being set will echo throughout the sport for years. Future champions may be forced to choose between safeguarding their long-term health and holding on to their titles. Fighters injured by fouls will have to seriously consider whether full transparency serves their best interests or puts their careers at risk.
That's fine. If you get punched or kicked in the eye, that's fine. If you get double eye poked in both eyes and you've got no vision because of a foul, why should I carry on so some dummy can look and say, oh yeah, Tom just got knocked out? Because I ain't going to fight if I can't see anything because of a foul. If it's a little illegal move, we have to fight through it. That's what we do as fighters. But when it's a foul, why am I going to put my health at risk when I can't see at all?
Aspinall had already hinted that boxing could become an option as support from the UFC continued to fall short. After everything that followed, that alternative may now feel far more realistic for a fighter who believes the organization he stood by ultimately turned its back on him. Meanwhile, the heavyweight division is left in limbo as it prepares to crown a new champion. Cyril Gane immediately emerges as the most obvious candidate, having come close to finishing Aspinall before the illegal foul halted their fight. Other contenders, including Alexander Volkov and Jailton Almeida, are expected to push their cases as well. The division will move forward, not because it's clean or fair, but because it has to. The business requires momentum, and Dana White has never allowed emotion to slow that machine. Still, one question refuses to go away. Is this truly forward progress, or simply business logic overpowering the human side of the sport? Championships are meant to change hands inside the cage. They are supposed to be earned or lost through competition, not taken away in conference rooms. Fighters are meant to be defeated by opponents, not removed by executive decisions. For Tom Aspinall, the path ahead remains uncertain. His vision must fully recover before he can even consider competing again. His relationship with the UFC and with Dana White appears deeply fractured, and the title he spent years chasing, the prize he sacrificed his body for, is gone without a single punch deciding it. There are also unanswered legal questions. Could Aspinall challenge a decision to strip him while recovering from an injury suffered during UFC competition? Could he argue that the organization failed to prevent illegal fouls and then penalize him for the consequences? Those answers may ultimately come from courtrooms, not fight nights. Everyone understands where responsibility lies. The fighter who extended his fingers